you have questions, you can type them into the chat. After the presentation, I will give Imam Gazi as many questions as we have time for. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Imam Gazi, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Imam Gazmend Aga, also known as Imam Gazi, is the Imam of the Albanian American Muslim community in Waterbury. He also serves as a university chaplain at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. He is part of the Three Amigos, an interfaith initiative in Greater Waterbury formed by a rabbi, a priest, and Imam Gazi. Additionally, Imam Gazi is a member of the community board of St. Mary's Hospital. In Albania, he has served as the vice chairman of the Muslim community of Albania, which is a very important position. Imam Gazi is currently a PhD candidate at Epoka University in Albania and a master's degree candidate at Hartford Seminary. He received his degree in theology from Marmara University. Active in interreligious activities throughout the region, Imam Gazi lives in Waterbury with his wife and 2 children. And we are very, very pleased to have him tonight to talk to us about Islam in Albania and the American Albanian community. We are very blessed to have you, Imam. Thank you for taking your time. I know you're a very busy man with a zillion things to do, so we really do appreciate your spending your time with us tonight.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Colleen and all attendees. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. I want to thank the Muslim Coalition of Connecticut who are doing a great job, especially during these hard times, by providing speakers for everyone who wants to learn more about Islam or any kind of interfaith activities. Considering the post-COVID or COVID time, I know everyone is tired from Zoomings, but I'll try to keep it short, and I'll try to introduce if the host can allow me to share screen. I'll try to open a PowerPoint presentation to make it, thank you, to make it easier for everyone to follow. We tend to follow easier the pictures and not the speech. So I have a short presentation regarding the Islam in Albania, the Albanian American Muslim community, and some information about the Albanian Muslim communities in USA. Just to introduce this picture, this is around 100 years old picture. These are the leaders of religious communities in Albania. One of the values of Albanians of Albania is the interreligious dialogue. And considering that all these are, let's say, Albanian communities since centuries, it makes it more fundamental for a small country to keep the peace in a multi-religious place. In the left, there is a small mosque, if you can see. That is the first building of the capital city of Albania, was a mosque. Of course, it was destroyed by the communist regime, and I'll speak in a few minutes about that. So this is the center of Muslims in Albania. The Islam in Albania is administratively organized by an umbrella organization called Muslim Community of Albania, which organizes more than 800 mosques, Sunni mosques in Albania. Usually all mosques are Sunni, but there are some tekkas and different tariqa communities which are related to other organizations beside Muslim Community of Albania. So Albania is a Muslim majority country. The population of Albania is always changing. A lot of Albanians immigrates because of the economy and the corruption. It seems very similar to a lot of Muslim majority countries. It's the same in Albania. According to, there are two main censuses organized in Albania. One is around 100 years ago, and one is less than 10 years ago. The census 100 years ago is kind of accepted uh, by all religious communities, but the one organized like 10 years ago it's not accepted by religious communities. But even though both census shows that 70% of believers, 70% of Albanians are Muslim, 20% are Orthodox Catholics, and 10% of believers are Roman Catholic. In the recent census, there is a very small percentage, I think 1% or less, of the Protestant Christians, which is mostly, we had some Protestant Christians even before communism, but the majority of them now is a post-communist area, especially by the missionaries, which come usually from United States of America. Albania was the world's only and the first country declared as the atheist state. So it was the official religion, kind of official religion, was declared the atheism, and it had a very strong attitude towards any type of religiosity. Everything religion was banned since totally banned since 1967, but even 20 years before that, like since 1945 to 1967 was an open war to everything religion. But on 1967 was the last day where any church, any mosque, any tekke, any religious thing was allowed. And almost all religious leaders were imprisoned or killed by the communist regime, which makes a sad part of our history. A difference between Albanians and other Balkan countries is that the state was not identified by religion, but mostly by language. That's why we have Albania with different religions, but it's not the same for example, Bosnians who speak for Muslims. And we have other nationalities mostly organized by religion. But in Albania, we have this difference. And maybe this is one of the cases where we never see religious conflicts. So we don't have any religious conflicts in Albania. I'm speaking about major cases, not for individuals. That's something else. There is a typical Balkanian Islamization of Albania. We have the first Muslims, traders coming since the ninth century. We have, it is the same for a lot of countries in the world where the first Muslims, they just traveled to different countries. It is believed that those were the first ones who introduced Islam to Albanians, and kind of they were familiar with this new religion, which was dominantly Christian, a Christian country. And after the 15th century, after the Ottoman conquest, the religion of Islam started becoming one of the main religions, and especially during the 17th and 18th century, we have large numbers of Albanians converting to Islam. There are more than 30 prime ministers of Ottoman Empire originally from Albania. So we see a very intense participation of Albanians in military and political positions. As happens today with immigrants, a lot of very successful immigrants who come here, they don't usually participate, and they don't usually invest back in their countries. The same was with Albanians during Ottoman Empire. We see them very successful in the center of empire, but we don't see any investments and any type of investments back in their country. So we don't have much infrastructure, Ottoman infrastructure in Albania, but we see a lot of Albanians in the history of Ottoman Empire. And Albania was one of the, maybe, I don't know any other country where the teaching of Albanian language was prohibited during the Ottoman Empire. This is one of the most controversial topics in our history towards Ottoman Empire, because there are no other examples in other countries. So we see poets, writers, different, for example, the first Turkish dictionary was made by Şemsettin Sami, who was in Albania, a very famous Albanian, a very famous Ottoman writer and poet. And we have some of the mosques in Albania. They are built 1495, another one in 1533, another one in Shkodra 1773, which shows kind of the old history of the mosques in Albania. And then we see communism coming to Albania, which was very harsh towards religious institutions. I might say maybe the harshest, the most harsh system against religion was the one in Albania. They kind of destroyed any type of infrastructure. They killed or executed any type of religious leader. One of the things which helped Albania not having religious conflicts after communism, I might say that, is seeing the communism being harsh towards all religious communities. So there were no exemption when they attacked religious institutions. They didn't be harsher to one community or to other. They kind of destroyed the entire mosques and churches and tekkas. For example, here we see 2,169 closed or converted religious institutions. That's just to give an example. Some mosques and some churches, they were converted to public toilets. So forcing a community of believers, like going today, you go there to pray, and forcing people to use as public toilets, or for animal storage, or any type of, just to downgrade any type of religious institutions. The names were changed, were forced. So, for example, my father's name is Abdullah. His father's name is Jamal and Hamdi and Rustam and Abdullah. So you have classic Muslim names. I have a beautiful name in Albanian, means Gazman, means happiness. But just an example to show the new generation, which you have to choose a name which doesn't show any religious connotation. Almost all buildings were destroyed. Less than 50 religious buildings were left. Just a few mosques, a few objects, and they were kept like monument, culture buildings, but everything else was destroyed. So, which means that everything, including the religious property, was confiscated. Just to give an example, there are more than 500 million square feet of land confiscated by the communist regime. So more than 500 million square feet land of entire religious communities. More than 70,000 olive trees. Olive tree is very famous in Albania, which is a sign of richness. And also, let's not forget that this means independence of religious communities. So if a religious communities owns property, that makes it independent from any kind of foreign interveners. So what happens is that by confiscating everything, and by destroying the entire religious infrastructure, even though after 1990s the communism fall, let's imagine that you find yourself without imams, you find yourself without teachers, without any type of buildings, without people who have ability to spend for religion, so with zero infrastructure. So we have just the very older generation. So they were in prison for 30 years, for 40 years. So if they were 20, 30 years before communism, now they're 60, 65. That's why when you go to the mosques, maybe not now, but if you go to the mosques in Albania, you have very old generation, 75, 80 years and up, and let's say 50 years and down, and you don't have a 30 years. So the majority of people are from two generations, but you don't have the middle generation because they they weren't allowed to go to mosques. They weren't allowed to pray. So we find ourselves without nothing. And that's why it becomes very important uh, for Muslim countries, because we're speaking about Islam, but it's the same for Catholics and Orthodox community. But since we're speaking about Islam, but it's kind of the same for all. It becomes very important who will help us. So who will invest, who will come, who will be there when we need. Because think this, Walmart is closed for 30 years and it's open after 30 years. You go to Walmart, but the Walmart is empty. So the same was with us. The mosque is closed for 30 years. You want to go there, there is no mosque. Even if there is a mosque, the mosque is empty, there is no imam. So this is a picture of Muslims and Christians celebrating the first khutbah. So you have Muslims and Christians together. The same was done in another church, but here's a mosque. The first khutbah after 23 years, 25 years. So after 25 years, the first khutbah. So we see how people were, and this is the first khutbah in the capital city. This is the first Jummah in the capital city. So you see thousands of people, they want to go back to their tradition, to their memories, to something which weren't allowed. But it's not easy because you go the first day with memories, but next week you want an imam in your street, in your neighborhood, but there is no imam. So that's why the first generations they started. So this is one of the few mosques which resisted the regime. Was built 2 centuries ago in the capital city. This is kind of one of the symbols of the city. This is just to give an example. This is my village. So here the first picture is a castle more than 1500 years old. Here's the school and then the houses. Just in this small city, there were 2 mosques and 10 tekkas before communism. And it needed 20 years after communism to build the first mosque, which you see in the picture. So now we have a mosque, alhamdulillah. Just to give an example of a village with a great religious. Now this is the Eid prayer. The Eid prayer in Albania is organized in the centers of the city. All mosques are closed and everyone comes together. This is another Eid prayer in Tirana, in the capital city. Another Eid prayer in Tirana. The Eid prayers in different places. This is the intra-faith activities, let's say, where different tariqas, they are there. They're Sunni and Shia tariqas, but it's hard to define them in a classical way as we speak about Sunni and Shia, because in Albania have kind of mixture since centuries. So you have people pray 5 times per day, and also having different traditions. But especially before communism, it was very, very strong. But now, by the revival of religion, the same is for tariqas too. This is kind of a census done, a survey, excuse me, done by international organizations about the trust, what people trust. In 2017, we see that the growing trust is in religious institutions, and that's a good example. We have interfaith dialogue as one of our values. Here is a church and a mosque in the same street, and this example is in different places. Albania is one of the small countries with this value. So here are the different pictures. So I don't know if how we are going. Okay, so how do you get the title of an imam? If you finish a school, a madrasa or university, and you are hired by the Muslim community of Albania, you are counted as an imam, because there's this umbrella organization which organizes the Islamic community. I was wondering which country or entity imposed upon it. So this is the community where I serve, in Waterbury. It's called Albanian American Muslim Community. The Albanians in Waterbury are very old. Here is a letter since 1919, so 102 years ago, from Albanians from Albanian Muslims in Waterbury. They even had an NGO called Albanian Mohammedan Religion Society. So Mohammedan means Muslim, the one who follows Prophet Muhammad. So Albanian Muslims, Albanian Muslim Religious Society, they have kind of an official exchange with the, I think it's with the census, USCIS. So in 1919, there was a survey. So 102 years ago, it was a survey in Waterbury, and there are around 300 Albanian Muslims, and we have 450 Albanian Muslims living in Philadelphia, and 400 living in Maine, Albanian Muslims, and there were like 30 Albanian Christians in Waterbury. So it's kind of the first decades of Muslims coming here. But if we think that there is a Muslim community in 1919, means that they came here several years ago. So this is our mosque. This is kind of old pictures and new pictures. We try to have kind of cultural and religious life together. It's not natural to think kids without culture, without folklore, without colors. So it's more wise to give them a culture and colors of life, which will give them values too, instead of just keeping them away from any type of this kind of activity, and then you find them just trying other stuff. So I think this is one of the successful parts of our community, keeping the culture and keeping religion together. We have a female president, one of the few Muslim communities with female, unfortunately, one of the few communities, because we need more. We see it's successful, and we think it might be the same for other communities too. So these are some of the events. This is the Sunday school pictures. This picture is after prayer. This is an intra-faith iftar. So this is the first floor. The second floor is the mosque. So these are some donations sent to Albania after an earthquake. We work with the mosque and Prospect Street in Waterbury, where two mosques together, they provide food to 100 families every month. That's one of the activities we have. This is from our Sunday school. These are some interfaith activities. This is three amigos in the mosque. So here is a priest, imam, and rabbi. Here is our mosque. Was very good. This is the rabbi, the priest, and the imam. That's a joke. It's not a joke. It's real. So what we did, and I think it was unique, is we brought the religious books together, because I think that if we are closer to our religious texts, to Quran, to Bible and Torah, we will have less conflicts. So the message was that if we understand as we should do our books, we will have more peace. So this was one of the times where we have 3 religious books in our mosques. This is a community breakfast. We used to do monthly before COVID. We still didn't decide what to do, so we have people coming together for breakfast Sunday. This is a prep backstage. This is the Albanian festival. This is the 16th year. Tomorrow is the first day, and after tomorrow is the second. Because of COVID, is mostly you buy food, you stay there, you have a chat, and you leave. And on Saturday there will be a folklore dance on 5:15 p.m. So if you want to come, you're more than welcome. So this is a 5,000-year-old dress, the folklore dress that you see. The unique one is the man folklore dance, so that is very, very old. This is a COVID Eid. Hopefully the last one like this was unique. So this is these are some pictures from different mosques, from different Albanian mosques. This is a mosque being opened in Brooklyn 50 years ago. This is Staten Island Mosque. It's also, they have one of the largest Islamic schools in USA full time. This is another one 50 years ago in Brooklyn. This is in New York, Arizona, mostly with the same stories. So Albanians coming from Albania, Macedonia, Kosovo, or Montenegro, they come here and they establish a community. For example, this one in Michigan is since 80 years, a very, very old community. So this is in the American Albanian Islamic Center of Wisconsin is established since 40 years. And now they have more than 400. This is Illinois. I tried to keep it short, and I think I was. Thank you. So I don't know about questions.
Thank you, Imam Gazi. So we do have some questions that came through, and I have a couple also, but I'm going to go with the audience questions first. And one of them was, who imposed communism on Albania?
So as always, when elephants fight, the mouses are the one who suffer. So it's a time when Russia and the West, they kind of have these discussions where will be their influence. So we have Greece out of this. Now we have Albania, Yugoslavia, and all that part under the influence of communism. But of course, there is an internal discussion too, where communists of Albania, they had a fight with the other part. So it's kind of a civil war, and the winners are the communists. So this is the it's like, for example, you have today Taliban's against the others, and they win. So whose fault is this? Everyone gives their own perspective. But for small countries is the decision of big guys, not the small ones.
Thank you, Imam Gazi, for that. We also have a question about what are the different traits or characteristics of tariqas?
So when we talk about Islam in Albania, it's very similar with Islam in Turkey. So when we think about Islam in Turkey, is mostly organized by religious groups. So different groups. Of course, there was kind of a Diyanet, so a central umbrella organization who organizes the religious life, but there is also the civil engagement. So before communism, this civil engagement, this kind of small NGOs were organized by tariqas, and you have people who choose a sheikh, their teacher, and you have small groups in villages, but also these small groups are related to a sheikh, to a more central organization, which is called tariqa. There is a Halveti tariqa, so different different tariqas where you have the classic Sunni tariqas, but also some with a Shi'i coloring in it. So, for example, the Bektashi community, which were officially expelled by Ataturk in Turkey, this center was moved to Albania. So now the world Bektashi leader is in Albania, like as an official entity. So Bektashis are the biggest group, and there you have other tariqas. Some of them they couldn't revive after communism, but some of them revived. So because it was very harsh to every religious entity. So after 90s, different countries invested in Albania, different NGOs, different religious groups invested. The same is for Muslims. Some of them opened schools, some of them established masjids, and that was how it started. So today we have a Muslim community of Albania, but more than 95% of their confiscated lands and properties, they weren't given back. So it's a Muslim community of Albania which doesn't have the economy to pay the wages, to do activities and everything else. So that's one of the main problems. That's one of the main problems of because for example, the Catholic community is more organized because it's the Vatican, which kind of has more experience in organizing the religious life, etc. The Orthodox community is mostly supported by the Greek Orthodox Church, kind of officially supported by the Greek Orthodox Church. But for Muslims, we don't have any official country or entity because the Muslim community of Albania is an independent community. So it was independent before communism. This is the value being independent, but also it's an obstacle because if you don't have your properties, you cannot generate finance, and without finance, it's hard on 2021 to do anything. Even Zoom needs kind of a finance to have someone to speak or to organize.
Yes, indeed. Now, you didn't mention a Jewish community in Albania. Was there ever one? Is there one now? What can you tell us about the Jewish community?
There is a very old history of the Jewish community in Albania. So they had a false prophet who immigrated to Sabatai, who immigrated to Albania. This is like several centuries ago. The Jewish community, they continued till communism came. We have a history with Jews expelled from Nazis during the Second World War, and Albania was the only European country, where the number of Jews was larger after war than before the war. We have a code of honor called Besa. So Albanian Muslims, they gave their Besa to Jews, which means that you are my guest. So, and if you give Besa to someone, if you give your honor, your word to someone, he's like your own kids. So none of Jews were given back to the Nazis. So everyone were covered within the families, if they were protected. Today there is a Jewish organization, but of course the number is not. It's maybe less than 100 people, but there is a Jewish entity in Albania too.
Very interesting. Has the experience of communism and being prevented from practicing faith affected the older generation of Albanians differently than it has affected your generation, and those even younger than you?
Mhm.
the generation after you? And does the young generation born after communism ended feel any effect of communism?
Well, I am born on 1982, so I was 10 years old when communism like officially ended. But there's no change in 24 hours. So even if the government changed the date, tomorrow you continue the same life. Uh, I I remember my grandfather reading his first Albanian Quran. He read it like 5, 6 times in just 2 years after communism, because it was kind of like a treasure having an Albanian a, a Quran in the Albanian language. Uh, you hear stories, but everything has to be in secret. So, for example, during my birth, they organized, we call it Mevlud. So you organize a night with prayer, with ilahi, with songs praising God and Prophet Muhammad sallam. But they did this in privacy. Uh, for example, when they fast, you shouldn't open the lights because you might have a spy in your neighborhood who would say, well, it was 3 a.m. and the lights were on during Ramadan, which means that family fasts. So sometimes when you go to work and people know that it's Ramadan, they would force you, the communist leader, they would force you to drink or to eat. So because I'm talking about fasting, because that's kind of the more intimate worship. Of course, prayer is unimaginable, or any type of anticipation, public, but I'm even fasting, which is very intimate. Like no one can, you don't talk to no one if you don't eat or drink. So even fasting was forced. Uh, it wasn't just destroying the infrastructure; it was destroying the sacredness of people. So if it's you can prevent people from going to mosque, but it's different if you change their attitude towards a mosque. So if you change the mosque to a toilet or to anything which you can use randomly in your life, I think that is kind of the biggest problems that happen. So after 90s, after the communism regime changed, the change is not easy. So for example, the generation of my father, I am the first male not drinking alcohol in my entire family. So we're all Muslims, but I am the first male in my entire family. I'm speaking about maybe 50 families who didn't drink alcohol. Because why? I went to a madrasa, a religious high school opened by Turks. There were We have different madrasas opened by different movements. Several of them are opened by Gulen movement, Hizmet movement. We have some opened by one opened by the Muslim Brotherhood, one opened by another Turkish movement. So if you don't go there, if you don't learn about religion in a school or in a mosque, in the closest mosque, there's no chance for you to really be a practicant of religion. So, but now, of course, is different. Yeah, there's internet. There's thousands of people who know religion. It was very hard because one of the things that communist regime played was that if you are religious, it's what happens in media today. If you are religious, religion wasn't very fashion. So religious man is uneducated. Going to mosque or church means that you are kind of uh, ordinary person. So it wasn't possible for someone with university to go to a mosque. But with years, this changed. And for example, now it's more easy for someone to go to Jum'ah, even if you're a doctor or a lawyer, or so that's part of your life. Uh, Now it's way different. And it's also one of the biggest examples which shows that religion is part of our nature and no one can remove it. So even communist regime with different projects, with whatever they did, they couldn't remove the desire for faith, the desire for religion in the hearts of, of people. So my father's generation, as the most damaged ones. So the ones who were born during communism. So for them was very, very hard to make a U-turn, a very hard U-turn. It was easier for us. For the older generation, they had memory, so they could make that connection. But for the middle generation wasn't easy. Of course, there are thousands of middle generation, but I'm speaking about the majority of them.
Thank you for that really instructive and heartfelt answer. What are the current concerns of the various generations here in Connecticut? Like, what are Albanian Muslims dealing with? What are there social problems? What are they? How is the integration of the older generation that immigrated relative to the kids that are growing up born here in the United States, like your own children?
So when we speak about Albanians, we usually speak about a nation. We know every nation has its weak points and strong points. So one of the strong points of Albanians is language. So Albanians learn language very fast. So even if they're 50 years old, they will come here, and after 2 years, they will speak English very well. So that helps a lot in integration. When it comes to Islamophobia and let's say xenophobia, color is one of the things which, unfortunately, being white, unfortunately, it helps and kind of not facing that Islamophobia that someone from Africa would face, or from Egypt, or from any other country. So white Muslim has an easier life in a especially post 9/11 area than another Muslim. So when it comes to this, there is not a lot of hardship in an Albanian Muslim life. I might say the same for them who came even 50 years ago. So when I speak with them, they tell me that the word Islam 50 years ago was very unknown. So people were very, very unaware what Islam is, or what does it mean being Muslim. But maybe because of their integration in society, it was easier for them to explain what this religion was. The problem, or the real issue, is how religious you are. So how much you show this religiosity. So when it comes to them, of course, the second generation here or the third generation here is very, very hard to kind of keep the same religiosity that you had 2 generations ago. One of the things is the inter-religious marriage, which is I tried to. It was my first paper in Hartford Seminary. Was about interreligious marriage, and how love doesn't know limits, and it's nice, but this has consequences too, has bills. Everything has a bill. So if you choose to say that I am a Christian, you are Muslim, so let the kids decide after 18 years old to become Muslim or Christian. It's not nice for either the Muslim or the Christian. So usually kids would always stay in the middle. So we have a lot of successful, peaceful, interreligious marriages when it comes to the couple. But there is a result in the kids' religiosity of having respect for both, but not exactly being either a practicing Christian or either a practicing Muslim. So this is one of the other things, is the interreligious marriage. And of course, another thing is the absence of religious leaders from our own nation, because it's hard to become an imam in USA during the 1970s. So there's no Hartford Seminary, no Zaytuna College, no YouTube. So there are just few imams who came from Albania, which weren't enough to kind of feed the grassroots. So coming to Waterbury, being an imam, etc. It wasn't the case 50 years ago. So I think these were kind of some of the things. Let's not forget that these regimes, they doesn't stay there. So you would have communist spies coming to USA and fighting the opening of a mosque, threatening families and saying that if you open a mosque here, your family back in Albania will be tortured. So there is this totalitarian regime, which also prevents someone who, I mean, you have to be a very motivated, highly motivated Muslim to say, even though this is happening, I'll work on faith. So the first thing you do is, well, I came here, I'm rescued from that country, I want to have a peaceful life, I don't want to deal with communism, etc. So these, even today, the totalitarian regimes from Muslim countries, they would come here, they would count names, they would see who is listening to this imam, who is going to this mosque, oh, so this is going there. So back in their countries, they would have problems. What they do is you choose to just separate from the community, just stay away.
Couple of more questions, and one statement that I'm going to read to you that came in, and this is from Rabbi Herb Rockman. He had to leave. He was here before, but he wanted us to know that he said the Albanian Muslim community played a substantial role in saving European Jews during World War II, which you did speak to. It is an interest of mine and not a well-known fact. So I think Rabbi Brockman is sending kudos to your community and gratitude. So that is from him. There were a few other questions, and one was about, you can call it different things, Salafi Islam, fundamentalist Islam. Has this become any issue? You know, let's call it radical extremist Islam, because not all Salafis, of course, are radical extremists. So is this any kind of an issue in Albania? And if it is, like, what are the issues, and what percentage of people, if any, are gravitating to that?
So it's 2021, and with this globalization, TikTok is not just here, it's in Albania too. WhatsApp is not just here, it's there too. So it's kind of, if you speak with a kid from Albania, you will see that they watch the same shows, the same movies with someone here. The same is for religious movements. So kind of almost every, I mean, the big religious movements, they're not just in a state, but they're kind of everywhere. So Muslim Brotherhood, the Salafi movement, Tabligh, Jamaat, so any kind of religious groups, they're not just in a country, but they're in different country. The same is for Albania. So after 1990s, there were young kids getting scholarships for studying theology in different Muslim countries, and there were hundreds, because the need was hundreds. So you have maybe 2,000 people going for theology in different Muslim countries, and of course, more than half of them was mainly supported and sponsored by the Salafi organizations. As we know, Salafism, it's not a static movement as all movements, so it changed during the years. I might say that during the first years, they were very harsh in Albania, so a lot of clash of cultures. For example, in our culture, you cannot marry it with a cousin, even if it's 10 generations. If you know it's a cousin, you cannot marry it. It's your like sister and brother. So bringing the the tradition discussion from countries where this is a normal thing would damage the people's attitude towards religion. This is just a small example. Or saying that if you don't have a bird, you're not a Muslim, or saying if your pants are not short enough, you'll go to Jahannam. So these discussions in the beginning of the re-rising of Islam, of course, damaged some of people's view towards Islam. You will have a lot of people having fear about Islam, having fear from going to a mosque, not feeling secure from going to a mosque. But of course, those imams, they were young people, and of course they get more mature, they see the reality is different when you come as a student, 22 years old, and then you become a father yourself and you see how things change. So we see that change in the Salafi imams too. So being more aware of the social aspects, and of course changing their let's say preaching, being more open for interfaith dialogue, which was a very utopia of talking 20 years ago. But of course, there are changes which will never finish. That's the beauty of pluralism, of having different opinions in Islam. But let's not forget that as we talk about the damage, let's not forget about the big support for the Islamic life too, especially when it comes to infrastructure. You have these pros and cons. I'm not a fan of clashings between movements, but it's always good to kind of sit on a table and discuss and improving. So everyone has to improve, has to change, everyone can bring something on the table and can contribute in social justice and social peace and the religiosity of the country.
Yes, we hope so. So we have a few more questions. One of our participants said, how do Albanians generally feel when they have, I'm gonna hold on that question and go to another question that I wanted, that was very interesting. I will come back to that one if we have time. Can you speak about the connection between Albania and Egypt? This person says, I know several Albanians who went to Egypt first before coming to the United States.
So, of course, when you read history, you learn that Mehmed Ali Pasha, an Albanian guy who was very religious and very smart, he was the man in Egypt. But of course, it's different when you go there. And I went to Egypt 18 years ago to study Arabic, like 2 months. I was very surprised when I saw that how famous Albanians are and how friendly they were. They were welcomed by people. So especially when it comes to the Azhar University, it still remains one of the main places where if you go there, you really finish theology. You really can bring values. And almost all big Albanian Muslim scholars, they were educated in Azhar University. The same is especially for Kosovo, for Albanians from Kosovo and Macedonia, because their communism wasn't harsh as it was here. There is the case. So going to Azhar still remains a very important place. Even today, the Muslim community of Albania has very strong relations with Azhar University. They are still they give scholarships, especially last decade. They're working a lot. So a lot of Albanians in Egypt, and that's one of the friendly places for us.
Very nice. One more question. How does one obtain, you may have addressed this a little bit, but how does one obtain the title of Imam in Albania? Is it issued by the state, by some national religious institution, by a university, or an individual mosque or community?
So I think I mentioned this. The Muslim community of Albania is not a state entity. It's not like Diyanet of Turkey, which is a state entity. So it's an NGO with a special agreement with the state. So that's kind of the juristic entity name. So that is, it's an independent community which decides itself what to do and how to organize the religious life, of course, within the constitution of Albania. So if someone finished theology or madrasa, let's not forget Albania, we're not speaking about a place where you have 20 theologians for a mosque, especially in the villages. Now it's different, there are imams, but let's say 10 years ago, the ones who was more knowledgeable, he would be an imam. But now, alhamdulillah, there's a university which has a theology department, faculty. So now is more different. So there is a hiring process, but the economy aspect is still. So you will have an imam with $100 per month wage in a place which is expensive as USA is. So being an imam, it's not a very highly motivational profession. And I might say the same for United States. Not a lot of people wants to be an imam. So I don't know.
Yes, we have a huge problem with this
support
issue.
your imam if you are.
Yes,
I don't know
in
who that's-
all of the communities, we face this problem. One last question. How do Albanians generally feel when they have emigrated to the United States? For example, is there a sense that Albanian culture and traditions are known or understood or appreciated? Can you tell us about any experience that stands out for you as an Albanian Muslim living in the United States? So that's a couple of questions there.
There is a place which love America more than Americans, and that's Albania. So Albanians, they really love America.
Kosovo too.
Yeah, Albanians, all Albanians.
Right. That's exactly.
Why? Because there is a historical aspect of this, but also is an appreciation about the opportunity that is given here. So if a regime takes your property, your house, your church, your mosque, your right to live, and you come to a country where next day you can buy a house, next day you can open a mosque, next day you can teach your kids in your own language, and next day you can open your company. Even religiously speaking, these are kind of the sacred things in Islam too, like the right of life, the right of speech, the right of property. This is what Islam wants us to do too. So I would say that America is one of the most, from an Albanian's perspective, and from our experiences, let's say, because every nation has different experiences. I don't want to judge them, but of course, I don't want to be judged for our experience. Fortunately, we have good experience, and for us as the most Muslim country in the world is USA, where you can live as a Muslim freely, different from a lot of Muslim majority countries where, and I think this was the case with Muslim lands too. One of the reasons people were more open to this new religion was that you can be an Orthodox Christian or a Catholic Christian in a Muslim land and no one would care. So the same as in USA, you can be a Sunni Muslim or Shia Muslim, and you can live in the same city freely and without problems, but it's not the same in the Muslim majority countries today. So how do we feel? We feel free after those bad experiences. We feel appreciated. We feel equal in some ways. Maybe it's because we had good experiences. I don't know the reasons, but I would say that Albanians love America.
Very nice, thank you. And did you have any experience that stands out for you as an Albanian Muslim living in the United States? That was the other part of that question.
My best and worst experience is hearing that you are a good Muslim. So this is good, but also I try to explain that, especially during the Three Amigos, that the vast majority of Muslims, I'm not different than the vast majority. So what I teach, what I say, it's a classic Islam, what we have learned, what we have read in our classic books. So any type of difference, and let's say usually, especially from media, it's not who we are. It's just the bad part of Muslims, which I think we should work more. So it's easy to blame someone. It's same if you go to a Muslim country and you talk for a Christian group which they never heard, they never met, they would have their own prejudices. So the same is for Muslims here. And that's why I really appreciate what Muslim Coalition of Connecticut does. And that's what we try to do with Three Amigos, is to remove these prejudices that we have for each other, which none of them really stands, but that's for everything. So the solution is just working more, explaining ourselves.
Yes, very, very important work that you're doing there. We just got another question in. We do have a few more minutes. The question is, does the Waterbury Mosque have Sunnis and Shia? Your mosque, your Albanian mosque.
In Albanian mosque, of course, but to be fair, we don't use words Sunni and Shia in our community. So, but seeing from a religious perspective, from someone who studies religion and for someone who is a practical Muslim, you can notice what are these nuances of this is from Sunni Islam or Shia Islam. But I don't think that especially the old generation really knows if that's Sunni or Shia. Mm-hmm. So I know the difference, I can say, but I don't say to them that this is Sunni or Shia or whatever. We are speaking for a very different generation. As I mentioned, interfaith dialogue as a value. Let's not forget intrafaith dialogue as a value. So having a different Islamic views and respecting each other, this was something which happened for centuries. Of course, there were wars for this, maybe, but in Albania, we have these people coexisting together since centuries. So there are different approaches. In some approaches, you would have very strictly going after that and saying that, well, this is Sunni, this is Shia. And you have this different approaches of kind of teaching what's right according to you, but also respecting the colors of others. I think that the second might be more appropriate for a post-communist country.
Yes, and I think we all appreciate your attitude towards the interfaith and intrafaith importance of dialogue and respect. As we know, the world has enough hate, and Islam is really about spreading love and peace among people. So, and I think you're doing really important work. All of your efforts may Allah reward them and reward your other amigos also who are engaged in that beautiful work. So I think I'm looking to see if I missed any. I don't think I missed any. But there is one person who's on who would love to read your paper about interfaith marriages. So we can get in touch with them later, and they can be in touch with you directly. And I think that we will get ready to close out. The night prayer, the Isha prayer has come in, and so let's see, I'm getting a message from my co-host, and I just want to, okay, yes, I want to tell everybody that the recording of this of this lecture will be available on the MCCT website soon, so you can look for that. I don't know if we have a way to notify people that it's available, to remind people that it's available, but if we do, we will. Otherwise, just people should check. We want to thank you, Imam Gazi, for spending this time with us tonight, especially given that you have this huge festival for your community starting tomorrow. It's amazing that you were able to give us this time tonight. It's been a beautiful time. You've provided us a lot of food for thought and a very enlightening experience. So we thank you for that. To our guests who have come tonight, thank you also for participating. And we do hope that those of you who are here tonight will attend more presentations this fall. We do have some things coming up, so watch for those emails. Once it's safe, someday, we hope to return to offering in-person talks. Imam Gazi really wanted to do this in person somewhere, but we had a hard time, everybody's skittish about bringing people together because the COVID is still out there. So this is why we decided to go with the Zoom, which is not as interpersonal and close as we like it to be. All of you, please feel free to reach out to us, Muslim Coalition of Connecticut, attend our events. You can find our contact information on our website. Again, you can Google us, Muslim Coalition of Connecticut. We thank you again, Imam Gazi, for this presentation, for this conversation. And we ask God's blessing upon you and your community, and we wish you all the success in your beautiful festival.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And the recording will be sent out by email, so everybody can.
Peace, everyone. God bless.
Good night. Assalamu alaikum wa
Alaikum.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good job.
What a nice man.